Hi, it's Ken Fader, your friendly neighborhood archaeologist. And today, in this episode of the series, I'm going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, Native American rock art. The official title here is Sheep, Spirits, Exploding Stars, and Massacres. Oh, and pterodactyls. So we're going to look at some real deal Native American rock art, but we're also going to look at how some people have completely misappropriated, misused, and misinterpreted some of that art. So let's get started. Now, first thing I want to do, I'm a college prof, and so I always feel compelled to give you definitions. So we're going to use two terms I want to define for you. One is petroglyph. Petroglyph is a variety of rock art that involves scratching, incising, pecking, scratching an image onto the face of a rock. A pictograph is an actual painting. That's probably what you're more used to when you think about pictorial arts. So it's actually making paints using often red ochre, yellow ochre for the color, with a binder of some animal product. It could be grease, it can be saliva, it can be albumin. Black usually comes from manganese or it could be charcoal. And those are the primary colors that are used in pictographs. So there are other specific ones. Now, because this is my series, I get to rant about something that probably none of you really care about, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that is using the term art. I get some blowback from folks, both from archaeologists, but also from some Native people, saying, Fader, you shouldn't call it art, because it's not just art. That blows my mind. The word just should never appear before the word art. It's not like art, well, calling something art means it was just for decoration. It's not important. That's nuts. Art can be informative. It can be moving. It can be emotionally harmful. It can be funny. It can be witty. It can be whimsical. It can be smart. It can be confusing. It can make you angry. It can make you sad. Art has the capacity to do all of those things, whether we're talking about decorative arts like painting or like petroglyphs, or songs, or literature, or a play, or a movie. All of those things are art, and it is something that human beings do, and for the most part, we don't see among animals, unless it's some zoo animal that they're forcing them to paint t-shirts that they can sell to make some money, which is fine. That's cool. Art is never just anything. Again, it's part of the human experience, and absolutely Native Americans are a part of that human experience in their production, in their application of their artistic sense to create things that are creative and imaginative and ingenious. All the images you see here I've seen, and I am moved when I see them. I am not a Native person. I am not of the time period, obviously, when these pieces of art were produced. And so, yeah, I'm going to have some problems explaining exactly what they mean. And I get that. Nevertheless, all of you, I think, should be able to appreciate the incredible beauty, the emotional weight of some of this art, because it's beautiful, it's remarkable, and I think it's absolutely worthy of the title art. Art's a good thing, it's a big thing, and it includes lots and lots of stuff. So sacred, not sacred, vernacular, hilarious, sad, all of that is encompassed by the word art. And now I want to show you a bunch of sites. So the first site we're going to look at is Three Rivers Petroglyph Site and Picnic Area. It's administered by the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management. Now, this is not a very well-known site. It's not nearly as well-known as Petroglyph National Monument, which is one of our premier national monuments. That's located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's the only monument dedicated exclusively to rock art in the United States. And it's beautiful. It's real easy to get to the hikes. It's in the middle of a city. Three Rivers is a little bit out of the way. I mean, if you go into White Sands National Park, it's pretty close. It's like less than an hour away, I think. So if you're ever in that area, definitely go. The only reason I'm aware of this, the only reason we went to it, is I was in the middle of writing my book, Ancient America, 50 Archaeological Sites to See for Yourself. So we were doing this sort of overall, this odyssey, looking at as many rock art sites as we could. We were in the area near Three Rivers, and you can't see all of the sites. They say, what the heck, we're close by. We'll check it out. Absolutely blown away. If you're in southern New Mexico, do not miss Three Rivers. It's astonishing. The first picture I'm going to show you is not of rock art. There's the location of it. It's a road sign. Around here, I live in Connecticut, there are lots of road signs, and most of them that warn motorists about animals, they're deer. They're white-tailed deer that we have here in abundance. So they don't want you crashing into deer. Well, out in the south, there are mule deer, so you see signs with mule deer, but you also see signs of these guys. These are big-horned sheep, magnificent animals. The males have these incredible curved horns. I think Dodge Ram, the trucks, has that image of it's a bighorn male with those big horns. Bighorn, Ovis canadensis, that's a zoo. This is a captive animal. Big males are like 300 pounds. The females are about 150. The reason these guys are a focus of the rock art, one of the focuses of the rock art at Three Rivers, is because we see archaeologically these folks were killing and eating these animals. They were a major source of meat. And so as an animal that was a part of their world, part of their environment, and important to them, both in terms of eating, but also spiritually, it's all part of nature. The artists at Three Rivers made lots and lots of depictions of them, including some amazing imagery that I'll show you in a little bit. So the art's not representational. In other words, nobody would look at that and say, okay, that is a perfect photorealistic image of a bighorn sheep. But they're artistic, they're playful, they're whimsical, they're beautiful, they're kind of riveting. And here's one with all kinds of designs in his body and this magnificent, it's a male with these magnificent horns. The females have horns, but they're like much, much smaller than the horns on the males. But this guy, that may be a female because of the smaller horns. Three Rivers, it's a ridge line, and there are lots and lots and lots of black volcanic boulders. And the images, there are over 20,000 distinct images across that ridge line. There's a short hike that leads you to an overhang to get out of the sun, but the rock art doesn't end there. It actually continues. This is my absolute favorite. Just the juxtaposition, the blue sky, that incredible piercingly, achingly blue sky of New Mexico, and in the foreground is that image of a sheep. Now, if you look at the right slide, my life is crazy. I have 2 adult sons. I have 2 young daughters. That's Molly and Ellie. Those are my girls. At the time, one is 5 and one is 3, so this is a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And what we did is we gave them pictures of various animals and said, okay, find them in the rock art. So they had a blast doing that. They had a lot of fun. And what they're looking at right there is that same image you saw on the left. And so they're recording it. Now, in close-up, check that out. Is that just, it's a style that you've not seen before. It's not representational. It's not a photorealistic image, but it's a particular style that just absolutely blows me away. And you'll notice something? There are 3 arrows in that animal's body. So is it depicting an actual historical incident where they shot a bighorn sheep with 3 arrows, or is it just kind of an imaginative, creative image of a kind of a generic hunt of bighorn sheep? Or is it what's called sympathetic magic? Are they doing that and art as a ceremonial kind of act to ensure that they will be successful in the hunt when they go out and hunt the bighorn sheep? We don't know. We will never know that. But just, I know. I just think that is absolutely spectacular. And it continues on and on and on at the site. So it's not only sheep, it's birds. So the one on the lower left is probably like a thunderbird, so a symbol of a very powerful raptor. On the right, now that's weird, right? So there's a bird. It's got the tail feathers, but between its head and its body, it's got that kind of stair-step design. You have to listen to local people. You have to listen to native people whose ancestors produced that art. Hopi will tell you that symbol, that stair-step, that's a rain cloud. So what the ancient people have done is they've produced this kind of sacred animal that's part bird, part rain cloud. And since this is a very dry area, it's near desert, and these people, the folks who, this is like 800 years old, this art, close to 1,000. These people were agricultural. It may very well be that is a symbol of a spirit animal who is being induced to produce rain to feed their crops. So, and that's cool. You know, they know the birds fly in the sky, and so do clouds. And so this amalgam of bird and rain cloud is a really interesting thing for folks to have done as a part of their art history, their art patterns. Some of the animals there, I don't know what this is. It's really cool. It's got a long, stiff tail. It's got this interesting geometric design in its body. And is that sheerly out of creativity? Are they ingesting hallucinogens or engaged in lack of sleep over a long period of time, lack of food over a long period of time, dancing over a long period of time to induce visions? That's what that may be. So I love this guy. Is it a sheep? Maybe. But look at his like rocking horse feet, like crescentic feet. Don't know what that means. Insects, so a millipede. What looks like, it might be a mosquito or something like that in the lower left. And then another kind of a little insect critter on the right. So it's a wide range of critters. There's a fish. I love that. That's a face. Kind of spooky looking face. Just on this isolated boulder with the mountains in the background. Now, it's hard to know exactly who this is, what this is, but usually you'll see that this image described as Tlaloc. Tlaloc was the rain god further south in Mexico. Now we know the people of New Mexico and Arizona had contact with the folks south of the border. I mean, there was no border, right? People moved back and forth. They traded and they shared ideas. They all were based, their economies were based on corn agriculture. So is it possible that these folks in New Mexico were exposed to images of the rain god Tlaloc and that they incorporated it into their iconography? That is at least possible. Now this guy, what is it? I don't know. It's really interesting. It doesn't look like a sheep. It doesn't look like a bison. Again, it could be a spirit animal that has no bearing on reality, has no basis in reality. It's just really a cool image. Now we're going to look at something different. So there we have animals part of the environment. Here we have something that has actually generated some controversy as to what precisely this imagery means. And my opinion is probably a minority opinion, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Don't hate me for my minority opinion, okay? This place is Chaco Canyon. Chaco Canyon is an amazing archaeological phenomenon. It's about a dozen, more really, of great houses built 1,000 years ago, 800, 900, 1,000 years ago. These are adobe structures that have multiple rooms, that have rooms for religious ceremonies called kivas. It's an astonishing place. Pueblo Bonito is the largest single structure built in North America by native people. It's 800 rooms. It's 3, maybe 4 stories in some places. It's just gigantic. I want to show you, there's a lot of rock art in the canyon. I want to show you rock art, one piece of rock art in particular, exactly where the arrow is pointing. Now, you hike out there, and I am now looking towards where the arrow is pointing to that cliff face right there. And I'm going to walk towards it. Now, you notice that there are some like shelves that represent part of where the area where the cliff lower down has eroded, has weathered out. On one of those shelves, that is like a ceiling, when you look up, you see a pictograph. And now that's it from a distance. Those weird looking things, those are bird nests made out of mud. But I don't know if you see, there's a little bit of a star, a crescent, and a hand. This is that same image now, but turned around. So now what I'm doing is I'm standing back against that cliff, and I'm looking to the east-ish. And now I'm going to look closer. Really impressive. So the idea here, the hypothesis is, you're standing against that cliff, you're looking up, you see a crescent, a star, and a hand. The hand generally means, an image of a hand means something important happened here. Okay, what important happened here? Standing against the cliff and looking up, if you look straight, you're seeing the vast expanse of the sky to the east. So is this a map telling you there's something in the sky? Because, wow, that looks like a star, that looks like the moon, and the hand is telling you something important happened. Here's what we know. This is the constellation Taurus, visible from Chaco Canyon, probably visible from where you live. That arrow is pointing to what is today called the Crab Nebula. Crab Nebula is a star that went supernova. Interestingly, as we speak, there is a nova, not a supernova, that is periodic. Periodically, it's a star that kind of explodes a little bit and then unexplodes. And the astronomers are believing that based on the periodicity of this nova, that it should happen pretty soon. I don't think it's visible to the naked eye. I think if you have a telescope where right now you see nothing, in a little bit you'll see a star appear, and it's that nova. Well, this is supernova. It is, astronomers will tell you that when you looked up at the sky, when this thing went supernova, it was as bright as a crescent moon, 7 times brighter than Venus, and it was so bright that it was visible during the day. That's impressive, right? You know, when you see the moon during the day, it's, oh, that's surprising. The moon is so bright, it's visible during the day. To have a star that's many light years away be that bright, that energetic, is remarkable. All right, we know, that's through telescope. I think this is the Hubble, that this is what that looks like. How cool is that? I mean, it wouldn't be cool if you lived on a planet near that star. That would be kind of awkward, but this is what it looks like using a very high-powered telescope. We know when it happened. To the day, July 4th, 1054 AD, the Common Era. How do we know? Chinese astronomers wrote about it. I don't speak Chinese. I apologize for the terrible, my terrible rendition of these Chinese words. This is from a translated document written by Chinese astronomers on dating to July 4th, 1054. In the first year of the period Chi Ho, the fifth moon, the day Chi Chu, a guest star appeared approximately several inches southeast of Tian Kuan, which today we know is, we call the star Zeta Tauri. After more than a year, it gradually became invisible. So what they're saying is, wow, this thing exploded in the sky. We had no expectation it was going to be there. It's a guest star. Big, bright ball of light in the sky. And then after a year, it kind of disappeared. Well, we know that's the Crab Nebula. That's when the Crab Nebula blew. That would have been visible from Chaco Canyon. We know that native people were interested in what happened in the sky. Chaco Canyon today is a dark sky park, meaning you go there and it's overwhelming. If you're from an urban area, you will truly think that you are on another planet because the sky is festooned with stars and you can see the Milky Way. It's mind-blowing. Well, the people of Chaco Canyon were certainly aware of the night sky, and if something appeared out of nowhere, they would have noticed it. The hypothesis is, again, not proven, but the hypothesis is that piece of rock art is a representation of the explosion of that star that produced the Crab Nebula. And here is a little bit of support. This is a simulation of what the sky would have looked like on July the 4th, 1054 AD from Chaco Canyon. The moon was a crescent, right? You're following that, right? And there's the star juxtaposed in terms of its location, the star that became a supernova, at least for part of that night. That's what it would have looked like. So there's the rock art again. You're seeing the similarity here. The crescent moon with the horns pointing up, a big bright image that looks like a star, an asterism, and a hand saying something important happened here. And my last slide is just this one. It's a comparison of this kind of computer image, this computer recreation of what the sky would have looked like at a certain point when that star went supernova and what the rock art looks like. Now, there are lots of problems with that hypothesis. Are we sure the rock art dates to the right period? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, then it's just a coincidence. Is it an accurate depiction? It sort of kind of is. So it's kind of, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. We can't prove it. We can't get into the minds of folks 1,000 years ago, or nearly 1,000 years ago, and say, hey, this is what we think was, and ask them what was going on here, what were you depicting? But it's an interesting thing to think about. And certainly the assumptions that, people at Chaco looked up at the sky, people at Chaco were aware of stars, people at Chaco would have noticed this brand new star entering into their their sky, it's just a little bit of a jump from there to say, yeah, maybe they actually depicted it as a form of art, in a form of art. And I like the hypothesis, but maybe at some point we'll find more of these. Well, wait a minute, we have. This is on the Zuni Reservation. Now, this guy, Kenny Bokate, I met him. He's a great guy. He is Ashiwi. Ashiwi is the name that the Zuni people give to themselves. People usually called Zuni, they call themselves Ashiwi. Zuni just means beautiful or beauty. And Zuni is the name of their community. They call their community Zuni. They call the river that runs by their community Zuni. Kenny wasn't upset if I said, can I call you, can I refer to you as a Zuni? Yeah, sure, it's fine. It's like being called a New Yorker if you're from New York. But the people themselves call themselves Ashiwi. Now, Kenny is a trained archaeologist. He went to Stanford. He knows what he's talking about. And he is sharing the things that he was told by his grandparents and his great-grandparents and his great-great-grandparents. Kenny gives tours. So he's part of, if you decide, they're like central New Mexico, northern New Mexico. If you're in that area, I very much encourage you, go to Zuni. The folks they're very accommodating. They love sharing their culture with folks who are interested in learning about it, and Kenny especially. And so you go to there's a culture center there, culture and history center there, and you contact them, and you can hire Kenny to give you a tour. And he's extremely knowledgeable and really helpful. And it was great getting the word about Zuni culture from an actual Zuni person. And Kenny is the one who pointed to us, who took us to some rock art, and he pointed up to that rock art. You see it in the distance on the left-hand side, a little bit close up on the right, and an even bigger close up there. And what is it? It's a crescent moon, and it's a little bit of a star or a cross. Kenny's perspective is that is probably an image of that same event. They live pretty close to Chaco Canyon, that his ancestors would have looked up at the sky in their very beautiful, clear, clean sky, would have seen this new star when the moon was in crescent, first showing up then, and that they would have recorded it as rock art. Again, it is a hypothesis, can't be tested, but when an Ashiwi person, a Zuni person tells me, this is what we've been passed down through the generations, I think we should take it seriously. And it's incredibly cool, but not unexpected. These folks they have among them scientists and architects and artists. And yeah, they're looking at the night sky and they're trying to explain what they see just the way people do all over the world. And in this case, maybe incorporating that into a panel of petroglyphs. Pretty cool. Now, as we're recording this in April of 2024. Soon after the Great North American Eclipse. So sadly, I was home. We only had about like 90% totality, and the clouds covered it. I saw a little bit of it, but friends I know who went to places where the totality was extensive, they said it was absolutely remarkable. Now, eclipses are remarkable things. It had huge impact on people, and it is at least conceivable that what I'm showing you here is art from about, not quite 400 years ago, like 350 years ago, produced by the native people called the Chumash. Now, this cave, called Chumash Painted Cave, is located on the hills just above Santa Barbara in California. And you'll notice that there are a bunch of circular images with triangles outside of them, but there's one black image. Now, if you were living in Southern California on November the 24th, 1677, and if the sky was clear, you would have seen a very impressive total eclipse of the sun. So the question is, and the Chumash people, this is their homeland. This is where they've lived since time immemorial, and they certainly produced the art in that cave, and the dating is about right. Is that piece of art, does it incorporate the eclipse of the sun? Now, if you look, all of those arrows are pointing to these circular images with the rays coming off, the trail triangles. Those are interpreted by most people as being sun. These are images of the sun. But you'll notice one of those circles is black. And again, we're going to have the hypothesis is presented that this is a representation of that total eclipse. But again, all you have to assume is that the native people looked up at the sky. They were completely mystified, amazed, in awe, terrified by the fact that it looked like something was occluding the sun. And it got dark, animals started acting strange, and sure enough, the sun was obscured. That's amazing. That maybe that's what they were recording. Next, we have another really kind of controversial piece of art. This is on the Tule River Reservation, also in Southern California, a few hours north of Los Angeles, north and east of Los Angeles. The Tule people were extraordinarily nice to me when I visited. They were very accommodating and very helpful. And they let me see the art that I'm going to be showing you today. The specific piece of art is called, in their language, Mayak Dadat. And they define it, they translate it into English as the hairy man. Now, here we are in California. The reservation, it's beautiful. It's extensive. It's all hills. It's mountains. It's a really nice place. And this is a sculpture in wood of Mayak Dadat, of the hairy man. Now, don't let the fact that it's called the hairy man fool you, right? There are lots of native kind of whimsical terms that they apply to animals that are metaphors. Orangutan in the language in Borneo, the local language, means wild man of the forest. Now, the people don't think orangutans are people, but they, hey, looks like a wild man, and he lives in the forest, so we call him orangutan. I think the same is true for hairy man. The Tule know it's not a guy, it's not a person. It's a person, it's a creature that walks on two legs and is hairy, which I'm pretty sure is a grizzly bear, and I'll explain why. This is a lovely little story, a lovely creation story that the Tule people have in fact published in a book that the tribal chairperson actually gave to me during my visit. And I want to give a shout out to Jenny Franco, Ruby Bays, Cecile Silva, Beatrix Wilcox, and Martha Toplaris. They're the women who have told the stories that are recorded in the book published by the tribe. Oh, this is a copy. That's the cover of the book with the Mayak Dadat image, and the women who I mentioned previously, their names show up on that title page. In the story of the creation of human beings, essentially, Eagle gathers all the spirit animals together. The world is here, but there are no people. It says, we're going to create human beings. So what do you think? How do you think we should do this? So it's by committee. And every animal suggests that we incorporate into human beings the characteristic that makes us who we are. So fish says, human beings ought to be able to swim. And everyone goes, okay, that's cool. Owl says, human beings ought to be able to see pretty good in the dark. Okay, we'll give them good eyes. Turtle says, human beings should be able to protect themselves by wearing clothes like my shell. Okay, we can do that. Lizard, I love lizard. Lizard says, we should give human beings long and flexible, dexterous fingers so they can make baskets. And the Tule people, in fact, make beautiful basketry. It's part of their artistic tradition. Now, coyote. Coyote is always kind of, many Native American people view coyote as kind of with suspicious eyes. Coyote's smart, but coyote is a trickster. He can't really be trusted. They realize that real coyotes, are really smart animals. And they can be kind of tricky. So coyote says, I think people should walk around on all fours, and they should have to use claws, and they should have to grub in the dirt, dig in the dirt for grubs. Grizzly bear says, no, I think that humans should be able to walk upright like I can. I think that'll make and then they can have the fingers and all. And coyote gets sort of pissed off and says, no, I want people to be like me, walk around on all fours. So they agree that let's have a race. Let's have a competition between coyote and lizard. And whoever wins the competition gets to decide. So coyote, being a trickster, tries to kind of trap lizard in a crack in a cliff. And he starts running. Lizard's way too fast. Lizard beats coyote. And human beings are now going to be made walking on 2 feet. What's really cool about the story is that the Tule people are recognizing that human beings are jacks of all trade and masters of none. So we can climb, we can walk, we can climb, but not as well as some animals can climb. We can run, but we're not as fast as some animals. And we can walk long distances, but not as long as some animals do. And we've got pretty good vision, but not as good as an eagle. And we can grab things, but our fingers aren't as long as a lizard's. But if you put it all together, you get a human being who can do a lot of things. Okay, so knowing that story, I also know there's a cave on the reservation that includes some of the animals that were images of some of the animals that were part of that creation, including a critter called the hairy man, Mayak ... So I went to I contacted members of the tribe and I asked if I could get permission to see it. They said, yes, but you have to have one of our people there with you. It's a sacred place. I said, absolutely. And I got this really nice dude, Zach. I don't know his last name. He didn't share his last name, but his name is Zach. And Zach took me to the site and gave me permission to take these photographs. So there I am. And again, thanks to Zach for the tour and for the permission. And I am right there. You probably can't see the imagery, but the cave is really cool. This is this gorgeous pictograph of a centipede. Here, this looks like the one on the bottom in red looks like a beaver. That's coyote, by the way. Coyote swallowing the moon. That may represent an image of a lunar eclipse, of the idea that maybe the moon disappears because coyote is involved because he's a trickster. But this is the primary image. This is as it was recorded in 1894 by Garrick Mallory in a book, Picture Writing of the American Indians. So we're looking specifically at that one on the far right, which to me, I'm looking at that thinking, that looks like a bear reared up on its hind legs. It's got claws. The form of that animal, that is the shape and size and configuration of its rear legs, is very bear-like and not very human-like or very ape-like. Today, that's what it looks like. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at Mayak ... as part of the creation story as told by the Thule people. What I've done here is I've applied this photo enhancement app called D-Stretch. So you're looking at it's mostly in red. Those certainly look like claws. Those certainly legs are really short, the way a bear would look when a bear is standing on its hind legs. Again, it's not very ape-like at all. Now again, in the Thule River creation story, it's grizzly bear who's helping people, who's helping in the creation of people, and he's the one responsible who we can credit for making human beings stand upright the way grizzly bear can. And I think that depiction, which is often presented by, this kind of Sasquatch dude bros who go to that cave and take pictures and, as far as I know, never credit the Thule people, probably don't have permission to go, which is disrespectful. I think the credit belongs to the Thule people, and I thank them for allowing me to experience this sacred place. But I think that they're wrong. I think people who are saying that, no, that's the hairy man, the hairy man is in fact Sasquatch, I think they've got it wrong. Now, Zach was pretty coy about it. I asked him, I said, all right, man, you know that some people call this Sasquatch. And he goes, yeah, I just call it the hairy man because that's what my people call it. I go, all right. Have you ever seen Sasquatch or Bigfoot? And he kind of grinned a little bit and he said, no, I've never seen it. But my uncle has, which is kind of interesting. So I don't know if Zach really believes that there's a big, hairy, upright hominid walking around in the woods above the reservation, or if he knows that it's a misconception. Now, they do call many modern, many contemporary Thule people do refer to Bigfoot. They do believe that there is a Bigfoot out there, but whether that image on the cave from maybe 500 to 1,000 years ago is Bigfoot, I think not. I think it's grizzly bear. Black Dragon Canyon, we're going to move over into Utah. The San Rafael Swell is this gorgeous geological dome that's all crisscrossed with these eroded canyons. And there's lots of rock art in there. It's an absolutely spectacular place. The dome is millions of years old. The rock art is quite a bit younger than that. That's where it is. So it's in Utah, central Utah. Got there, it was a little bit of a dirt road, and then we walk through this narrow canyon, and we come upon this vast expanse of rock. And on that vast expanse of rock, in this photograph, there are 3 clusters of rock art, pictographs, all red, probably red ochre. The one on the left are these upright, weird images. Where you see white, for the most part, that's been chalked in later. It's a kind of vandalism, even though the people think they're doing a good job of making the rock art easier to see. Don't do that. Do not touch the rock art. Don't put oils on your fingers on the rock art. Leave it alone. But so you got 3 upright creatures. Not sure what they are. The rock art on the far right, where that arrow is pointing, it's an anthropomorph, so it's somebody, no arms. Well, they got legs. They don't have arms. And then to the right looks like a coyote or a dog. But the primary image that I want to show you is this one in the middle. And as soon as you look at it, and if you remember the title included the word, and pterodactyls. Again, the white is added on. I've boosted the contrast there. And now giving you the line, I'm outlining what is called by many people as a pterodactyl, called a pterodactyl, and it's used as evidence or proof that there were pterodactyls flying in the blue skies of Utah when Native Americans looked up, saw pterodactyls, and then painted the image on a wall. I'm laughing because I don't think that's really what we're seeing here, but this is what the claim is. Now that pterodactyl, that's a pretty sad looking pterodactyl. That's the pterodactyl from the island of misfit pterodactyls. I mean, how is that going to fly? His left wing, this one here, is like this super narrow, kind of looks like a snake. We'll get to that. And the right one is all humpy and lumpy. And if you really look at this carefully, you'll notice that that line kind of includes images that seem to be sort of separate, that they're not all really part of the same image. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. If you look at the creationist websites where people believe the world is really 6,000 years old, it's not any older than that, and they really believe that people and dinosaurs and people and pterodactyls coexisted, they still claim, oh yeah, that's a pterosaur or a pterodactyl. The Black Dragon Canyon pterosaur is still soaring. Well, some archaeologists decided, we're going to take a real close look at this, because this is something we should be able to approach with modern technology, with image enhancement technology, with ways of coaxing out of the rock data about where the paint really is, where the background is red too. So where can we actually isolate what had been painted on this wall and see, is it all part of one image of some weird kind of strange pterodactyl, or is it multiple images that have been incorrectly combined into one sort of fanciful image? And yes, for those not knowing, the Flintstones is not a documentary. Fred really didn't fly around on pterodactyls, but that seems to be what the implication here is. Anyway, back to this. So there's a nice image. Again, the white is modern. And what I'm going to show you now I'm going to isolate, just using the naked eye, isolate what I think are the 3 separate images. That image on the right of the slide is really not connected to the rest of the body of the pterodactyl. That image on the left of the slide is not connected to that image on the right, nor is it connected to the third part of it, which is this guy right here. It's not one pterodactyl with, facing this way with his weird arms and his feet facing the other way. It's 3 separate images. And we can show that super clearly there. When you apply modern technology, this was Jean-Louis Lequelec, who was actually a French archaeologist, an expert in rock art in Europe. He came over with a number of other scientists. They analyzed the paint on the wall, and that's what the image actually looks like. The image on the right is a snake. It's called a horned snake. These really exist. They have little horns on them. If you're not happy with snakes, how happy are you with a snake that's got horns? There's what was being proposed as the open mouth of the pterodactyl. It's a dude, it's a guy looking in that direction. The other one, again, based on where the paint actually is located, is just an anthropomorph. It's a human being looking in the opposite direction. So that very, very clearly shows that there ain't no pterodactyl flying through Black Dragon Canyon. And this is really nice. It was the claim that there were pterodactyls that induced archaeologists to actually apply a technology that could answer the question, is that an image of a pterodactyl? And the answer is a firm no. So no Sasquatch, no pterodactyls. I want to thank Harris Hardy. Harris Hardy is Dene. Dene is what the Navajo people usually call themselves. But so it's interchangeable. I don't think they're offended by being called Navajo. Harris lives in part of the year in Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly is this lovely, lovely archaeological canyon up in the American Southwest. It's part of the Navajo reservation. The Navajo now live in the canyon. It's been lived in by multiple different groups of native people. And Harris makes a living by giving tours to folks of Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly, it's part of a national monument, but it is private property. It's the Navajo live there. They have farms there. They have their animals there. And so to go down in there, except for one area where you're allowed to hike down by yourself, you have to have a Navajo guide to guide you. And that was great. And Harris was incredibly informative and incredibly helpful in telling us the story of his people. I want to focus on a piece of rock art that he showed us in an area called Massacre Cave. That cave right there, the story that the Navajo tell is that the Navajo were living in the canyon and Spanish, this is 1805, Spanish conquistadors, Spanish soldiers had entered into the canyon because the Spanish wanted that. It's really good farmland. And that they were engaged in battles with Navajo warriors. And in this particular instance, according to the Navajo, the Spanish tell a somewhat different story. The Navajo soldiers were all drawn away from this area, the area around what became Massacre Cave, and were engaged in combat. But there were Spanish scouts still back in this area looking for where the Navajo were hiding in order to capture them or kill them. And in one specific instance, there's a sign called the place where two fell off. And the story that Harris told at the Navajo tell is that a Navajo woman saw one of these Spanish scouts and knew that if he saw where they were in that cave, 100 people hiding in the cave, older men, women, and children. And that if the scout saw this, he would report back to his troops, who would enter back into the canyon and do them harm. And so what she did was she tackled the Spanish scout. And the only way she could prevent him from telling anybody where they were, where her people were, was to push him off the cliff, and she was attached. So she gave her life to help try to protect her people. And she is a revered person among the Navajo as somebody who tried to save the lives of all those other women, especially women and children. And they have a sign memorializing where, according to them, that happened. Now, the Spanish say, oh, we don't know about that, and it was all soldiers in the cave. The Navajo say that's an absolute lie. It was women and children. It was people who needed to stay there in order to help protect themselves. You can see bullet holes throughout there, because what happens is that the Spanish opened up fire. They ultimately found them, opened fire, and killed everybody. The story that Harris tells, and that the Navajo tell, is there was one survivor. And the one survivor was a little kid. This is a little kid who's in a cave while his mother, his aunties, his grandparents are being slaughtered by Spaniards with guns. And he was told, this is the story that has been passed down since 1805, he was told that he would stay at the very bottom of a pile of dead bodies. And that when the shooting stopped, he should wait until nightfall and then try to escape. And tell that story. Never forget that story. Don't let people forget this story of the slaughter, of the massacre that happened in that cave. And he did. He escaped. Found people to take care of him, found relatives outside of Canyon de Chelly, grew up, returned to Canyon de Chelly. And in order for for that story to never be lost, to never be forgotten, he created a work of art. And that work of art is a pictograph. Now that shows a bunch of Spaniards on horseback with guns. It's a close-up of it. So the Spanish had guns, they rode on horses, and you'll notice that the person smack in the middle of that has a cross on his tunic. The story that is told by the Navajo is that that was a priest, that the Spanish soldiers traveled with a priest, and that before the massacre occurred, the priest sanctioned the killing of the Navajo in the cave. Now, I am not going to tell you that I can prove resolutely, absolutely that happened, but that is the story, that is the history of that cave as told by the Navajo. You know, it's like history is written by the winners. Well, maybe we need an instance in which history here is written by the people who were the relatives of those who were massacred. And I mean, it certainly is not beyond question that that's exactly what had occurred in Massacre Cave. I want to end this now with two things. I want to let the Pueblo people who also live in the American Southwest, who have a deep connection to archaeological sites, including rock art. And this is the affiliated Pueblo Committee. They're talking specifically about Bandelier National Monument, but it applies to all of the petroglyphs and all of the sites, Native American sites that I mentioned and throughout this series. Spiritually, our ancestors still live here at Bandelier. You see reminders of their presence here, their homes, their kivas, their petroglyphs. As you walk in their footsteps, value the earth beneath you and show everything the same respect we do when we revisit this sacred place. And then my last word is this about the Native American material I talked about here specifically, but also throughout, is the people. We owe them many thanks to the Native people of the Americas for the spectacular legacy they bequeathed to their descendants, places where modern Native people can commune with their ancestors and where non-Natives can, if we listen and look with respect, revel in their wisdom and beauty. I hope you enjoyed that discussion of Native American rock art. It's amazing stuff, and we'll see you next time.